Hey, this is David G for a Napalm Extreme Workflow Composer demo. Napalm being the network automation and programmability abstraction layer with multi-vendor support. It rolls off the tongue, that one. So what we have configured for this demo is a simple topology. We have a now Extreme SLX with two VRFs, VRF-A, VRF-B. There are BGP sessions open between each of those VRFs and a SRX, so SRX01, and a Cisco CSR, which is called CSR01. So again, two BGP sessions from each of the VRFs. It's pretty much as per the diagram. The SLXs are in AS10 or Autonomous System 10. The SRX has AS20 and the CSR has AS30. Each of the SLXs advertises 10.10.10/24, 10.10.20/24, and the receive policies on the SRX and the CSR respectively allow those through. What they don't allow through are the new prefixes, which our AS10 has, told us about. We've got to use our imagination here and say, hey, we've got a new load balancer. These are, some of the addresses available. We're advertising those routes explicitly to you, our partner. You need to reconfigure your border gateway routers and accept those prefixes. And what we have on the control plane is we have the workflow composer setup and we have the Napalmdemopack installed. And what I'm going to show you is two demos. We have one demo which shows you Napalm itself, and we're going to go through some of those capabilities there. And we have another demo which automates everything. And this is an automation demo, and no automation demo is complete without something a little bit more rounded. So demo one, what we're going to do is we're going to push some prefix lists or prefix list modifications to the gateway routers. We're also going to use Napalm to soft clear the routers or the inbound routes. We might not need to do that, but we can do. We can also use Napalm to transmit ICMP pings as well, or echo requests, but using the proper parlance. So for the first demo, let's show you the configuration file in place on the BWC. So this is located in ops, StackStorm, configs, and Napalm. And what we have here is two sections. We have the credentials section, so for our host CSR01, the username and password, and also for the SRX01. And then we have the device section, and the device section ties together the credentials subsection. So again, we have the host CSR01, driver iOS port 22, and the credentials section to use is CSR01. Great. So now we have a tied together credential set. And also, just to show you, if you're thinking what else needs to be in place for this to work, you also need entries in your host file. And I put these in here. So we have SRX01 and CSR01, which means then I can do things like this. And I can make sure that's there on the control plane, which it is, and we've got a response and it's working. Okay, so let's go off to the Napalmdemopack. So this is the Workflow Composer UI. This will be rebranded away from Brocade at some point. An Napalmdemopack is installed. The configuration is in memory. If you make any configuration changes, you have to reload the configuration into memory on the composer. It doesn't understand if you make a change on a text file. Those files aren't watched. The interesting thing we're looking at right now is how to push the configuration onto the device. Napalm itself is consisted of a lot of getters. A getter being just, go get me information, go get me information from the ARP table, go get me information about BGP neighbors. Run a CLI command. We can do these things. We can also do pings. A word of warning with Napalm. Napalm is great as a generic abstraction layer, but you need to be very aware of the compatibility matrix. Different operating systems give you different levels of support with each of the Napalm abstractions. You will note here that ping isn't supported on iOS XR. I can also confirm that's the same on iOS XE as well. It doesn't work. However, it does on Junos. And CLI commands are supported as well, the CLI commands on this particular table. But always come to this URL and check out the support matrix for Napalm if you are planning anything with Napalm. It's very important that you do that, else you might have some frustration. Okay, so load configuration, what does it need? It needs a host name. We can see this by the asterisk that basically says this is mandatory. It needs a driver, but again, it's not mandatory, so we have that in our configuration files. We don't have to worry about that. Again, for the same for port, the same for credentials. It does need a configuration file. And what I've done on the VM I've created a directory called snippets, and in snippets there are 3 files. There's a temporary file, a CSR, and a Junos. So if I want to just take a little peek inside maybe the Cisco iOS XE configuration snippet that we want to push out, we have 2 entries. And if you go back to the diagram in your head, we know that we want to receive 2 new prefixes, 10.10.11/32 and 10.10.21/32. And this prefix list will absolutely allow us to do that. So this is relatively easy. And just to show you this isn't all smoke and mirrors, I'm just going to log right now into that device and show you the running configuration. I think I've just put the password in incorrectly there, which absolutely I have. I knew I'd done that. Right. Show run inc prefix list. We have 2 prefix list entries right now, 10.10.10/24, 10.10.20/24, which as well means the routes I'm expecting to see are only the ones matched by the prefix list. Great, so we have a route map set up. The route map uses a prefix list to control inbound routes. And all we're going to do here is we're going to append permits onto the inbound prefix list, which then theoretically allows routes into the BGP table and this into the routing table. Great stuff. Right, so now we've done that, let's exit from that device. Let's just clear the screen down because I hate this kind of noise. And what we're going to do is we're going to run the load configuration. So hostname CSR01. We don't need to worry about anything else other than the configuration file. And I know it's called CSR. And then what we're going to do is just run. I don't need to worry about inline transfer. Inline transfer is basically saying if I can't make SCP work, and you'll get an error message, it's down to the configuration on the device and not the workflow composer, then you can use inline transfer. Inline transfer uses a CLI to dump the configuration instead of an SCP copy. Okay, and I'm going to run that. Now, this can take a little bit of a while. So what happens in the background is the configuration is picked up from the local directory, an SSH session is opened, and then SCP is used to copy the file into place. So here we have the history tab on the workflow composer, and this changes in real time. So right now we are grey, and we are kind of like a fade in, fade out grey. And what will happen is this will go green when we have information. When information has come back, and the action output here will change. We've just seen this change. We've just seen this change live. So we have the status is changed to succeeded, and we have load merge successful on CSR01. And you think, oh, that's great. Now, what does that mean for us, really? It means that hopefully the configuration is in place. So let's do a little validation check. Prefix list, and we have 2 new entries. We have 10.10.11/32 and 10.10.21/32. It doesn't mean, however, that the routes are in the routing table. We have to wait for sometimes for hold timers to expire. Now, 10.10.11/32 and 10.10.21/32 are indeed in the routing table. This happened 9 seconds before I ran the command, which is great. And sometimes what we have to do to force that to happen is just do a soft clear from the BGP table, so the routes are evaluated. It goes through the tiebreaker selection, and then the routes obviously go into the routing table. We don't have to do that in this instance, and this is fantastic. And you think, okay, well, that's great. The routes are in there, but from an automation point of view, what's the next step? The next step is, do we have reachability? Can we actually ping these things? Now, going back to here, I already said that this is a compatibility matrix for Napalm. That Napalm doesn't support ping for iOS XR, and I said it doesn't do it for XE as well. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you that doesn't work on the alternate way of dealing with these things. So, again, our hostname, CSR01. We don't have to worry about the driver, the port, the credentials. The destination for the ping is 10.10.11. Let's just keep things simple. All the defaults are fine. And let's go here. And what I'm going to do at the same time is I'm expecting that to fail. So I'm just going to show you the alternate. So CSR01, driver, port, credentials, whatever. Ping 10.10.11. I'm wrapping a CLI command in the CLI action. And I'm just going to run that. And what I'm going to do, I want to go to the history page. So, Napalm ping. even though we have a success, we actually have an error, and you need to be aware of these things, because every time we do anything on the CLI, what the green basically says is I logged in, I ran a command, and I got a result. It doesn't reflect what actually happened. And on my CLI command, the same kind of logic in the background, but now what I've got back is the result from me running the ping CLI command. So you think, well, that's great. I can visually see that. But from an automation point of view, it's not great. We don't have structured data. We have a raw array. So what we need to do is we need to parse that information to get anything useful out of that. So you think, well, that's is that so painful? Napalm gives us a set of abstractions, and the abstraction returns information. The information might not be what in the form we want, so we do have to think about parsing. This isn't a huge lift. There are lots of examples out there, and funnily enough, in the next demo, one of the examples is exactly that. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to jump on the devices. I'm just going to do some clear up, and I'm just going to pause the video for a few seconds. Okay. Welcome back, even though this for you will be like 2 seconds. Next demo. What I've done, I've created a pack, and the pack wraps Napalm. It wraps around Napalm. In automation, we don't really want to be doing things manually. The whole promise of automation is not to just replace the CLI and give you a different UI. It's to tie these things together automatically and allow data to flow through a process. Imagine this as a engineering flowchart, and data flows through that flowchart to our desired end goal. And what I've done, I built a pack which allows us to do these things. So we can add in the prefixes we want to add, test nodes within the prefixes we can receive, and then we can validate automatically without having to do anything. This is available on GitHub, and I'll give you the address just after the location, the URL of that pack just after the demo. What we do when we validate is the results come back to Slack, so we can actually see them. I think the pack is relatively simple. It gives us a lot of power, and it shows you your logic. When you apply your business logic and your end state desire with a pack like Napalm gives you again these general abstractions. When you tie the two things together, you get some really interesting capabilities and really powerful capabilities. So right now I have a basic list of packs. I don't have my demo pack, so st2 pack install. This is the URL, and the I don't know why I just did that. That was a brain error. David John G. And then the pack is called Napalm Demo. So this is available. This is in the public. You can download this today and run this today. All you need to do is put in the URL. The pack is downloaded. A pre-run is made. It is installed. The pack dependencies are installed. And this pack is quite simple. And then we go on to the final action, which is register. And then we get a list back of the metadata for the pack. So that's great. So now if we do st2 pack list, ta-da, we have Napalm Demo. And in that pack, we have a number of things. So I'm going to go back to the Actions tab. I need to do a page refresh because obviously now I've made a change to the underlying system. Napalm Demo is here. And we have a number of actions. And the actions include some workflows. I'm not going to go through all of the actions. I'll leave you to have some fun with that. The things we're interested in is add device, add ping node, and workflow add prefix. The rest of the actions and workflows really kind of help these main ones that we've just gone through. My kind of core philosophy is don't reinvent the wheel. You never have to reinvent the wheel. Some people like to do it. I think if you like to do that, then that's fine. If you like to get nitty gritty in code, then that's great. But I always like to keep things simple. And if you are going to make automation, say workflows or suites or packs, you have to bear in mind that other people are going to use them. And if you can build a system that's easy to navigate, then you've just made your life a little bit easier. Okay. On that note, what I've done, I've used the internal key value store on the workflow composer. I'm not using an external database for tracking things. I'm using the tools that the platform gives me here. So when I said earlier on, the things we're interested in is add device and add ping node. What these two actions do is add keys to the key value store. So if I add a device in here, and it is of kind CSR, and I'm going to call it CSR01 as per our hostname entry, what will happen when I run this is a key is generated. And I'm going to do the same again for the SRX, and I'm going to run those two things. So green, green, great. Now if I do st2 keylist, what I see in the system scope, and this is a scope here, this column, it's two keys. ndev is a key prefix, and the CSR is the host name. CSR01 is a host name, and SRX01 is a host name. And what happens in my code is basically a routine says, give me all the keys prefixed by ndev, and the value of the keys is a device type. So this allows us to do branching within the workflows and logical decisions. So you think, well, that's great, but what about add ping node? Add ping node, I said earlier on, doing manual testing sucks. We don't really want to do this. Infrastructure as code, CI/CD requires that we do things, automatically or automagically. Add ping node adds more keys into the key value store. We have an IP address and we have the description of what the node is, and surprise, surprise, there is another prefix that goes in front of the key, which is nping. But we're not going to do that by hand. We can do that by hand if we so want to. But what happens is this workflow here, this workflow add prefix, does a number of things, and I'll show you what some of that logic looks like in a moment. But what we can do here in this workflow is we can add devices, so CSR01, SRX01, because I want both devices to be affected by this workflow. The prefix I want to load, 10.10.11/32, the test is a IP address of a reachable node in the prefix that we want to receive. So I think, well, actually, it's the same as, in this case, it's the same as a /32. And then the test description, and I happen to know this is loopback 10 in VRF-A on the SLX. So when I run this particular workflow, what's going to happen is it logs into both devices, adds this prefix to the prefix list, and that means really generating a configuration. It means copying that configuration across, deleting the configuration file. It means creating the keys for the tests, and then it means validating. For this one, I'm going to add both prefixes in, 10.10.11 and 10.10.21, but I'm going to do that in a separate workflow just because I want two different test nodes to be added in. So I'm not going to tick validate yet. I'm going to do that on the next run. So I'm going to run this and leave that one running in the background. I'm now going to add in the second prefix and the second test node. I also happen to know that's loopback 20 on VRFB on the SLX. And now I'm going to tick validate. So what happens is on the second run, it says now go through and make sure all of my things are reachable, please. And I'm going to run it again. And now these two workflows will run in isolation. I am not at all concerned with that. Now, while these two things are running, I'm going to very quickly talk about some of the other actions. So this write config action here, you can copy and paste some configuration. When you hit run, it creates a temporary configuration file in the snippets directory. And then up here we have delete config file, which deletes a config file from the snippets directory. You just have to give it the file name. Napalm requires that these are files, so I've built some actions that basically help us. I've created some parsers to get the results from the ping responses. We have the pinger, which does all the heavy lifting for running pings on the devices and getting the results back. Some of these actions, so create CSR prefix list, create Junos prefix list. We don't want to be doing any of this by hand. We want to be doing this very little. So just to show you how this works, I can create a prefix list just from one of the prefixes. And you think, oh, well, that's great, but you've already got that in one of the files. And I think, well, no, I haven't. So what I can do is I can, we can do some different things here. Just to show you, this isn't smoke and mirrors, and you can download this today and play with this anyway. There we go. Just to show you, this is all dynamic and exactly how we want it. Now, interestingly, whilst we've been doing this, both of the workflows have completed. And in the background now we have results. The interesting thing is the configuration is being generated and pushed to the devices. The validation step has occurred, and now we've got the results from the final validation run. So the second workflow is completed. It is logged into each of the devices, ran the pings, and came back with the results. Now, on the CI/CD pipeline, this information will be too much to parse. What we need to do is basically say if all these devices are reachable, and all of them are reachable, and let's say with minus 10% packet loss or something, so 90% successful, then we have a good result, and maybe we just come back with an OK. But for the demo purposes, I think this information is quite useful. And the actual logical decisions taken in the workflows can be quite interesting. I recommend that you install the pack, get a basic environment together, and just see what happens. I don't think any of this is particularly rocket science, and it can be very, very, very helpful to your organization. You don't have to think about this in terms of prefix lists, and you think, well, I'm not doing anything with BGP. You don't have to do anything with BGP. This might be firewall rules, it might be NAT rules. Think about things programmatically, and you will have a great time of this. So the pack location, the demo pack location, I don't recommend this running in production. This is really a demo pack just to exercise some of these features and obviously show you what we can do with Napalm. Is github.com/my username, so David John G, and the Napalm demo /Napalm demo. And you can do a git clone as well. If you just put your .git on the end, then you will be able to do a git clone in your terminal. Okay, this is it from me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.